Hi folks, you're with Tassus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about 5 or 6 years ago now, a Democrat deep state globalist gambit to try and frustrate Donald Trump from appointing a constitutional judge to the Supreme Court of the United States. And I don't think I've ever seen such high-handed, deceitful, treacherous tactics ever used to frustrate the will of a government ever. And I'm sure if it's happened, maybe someone can correct me here in the comments, but I don't think this has ever been attempted, such subversion has ever been attempted before by the Democrat deep state or any political party for that matter. So just to give you the background, the deep state and the Democrats and the globalists thought that Hillary Clinton would easily win the 2016 election. She had the entire media commentariat on her side. Even the majority of Republicans, who were deep state goons anyway, were refusing to support Trump. And it appeared the public services were very much on Hillary's side. So really, other than the people, Trump had sort of no supporters, or very few. Now, when he won, and I think they even attempted, I think they had a provisional plan there I think they would have added 2 to 3 million votes illegally, fraudulent votes to Hillary's total. But still, it wasn't enough. Trump got the numbers in the swing states that they didn't expect him to, and they were kind of caught flat-footed. They just didn't do enough cheating, something they certainly made good on in 2020. So Trump won, and they went, holy fuck, and they just didn't expect it, and they weren't prepared for it. Now, during Trump's presidency, he got the option of appointing 3 Supreme Court justices, and this was something that given they were so confident that Hillary was going to win in 2016, they didn't really sort of think through the ramifications of what if Hillary doesn't win. And they were hoping that maybe, during Trump's presidency, he'd maybe appoint 1 worst case scenario. But then it became clear that he'd probably get more. Ruth Ginsburg's health was deteriorating rapidly, and it ended up Trump got 3. Now, Trump appointed like Neil Gorsuch, Amy Coney Barrett, and Brett Kavanaugh. Now, you could say they're constitutional judges. I think they're all sort of really gadflies. If you look at the pattern of their decisions on the Supreme Court of the United States, I think it's hard to find a definitive pattern. If you were to say, well, are they more centre-right than anything else, you could probably say that. But otherwise, their decisions have been all over the place. They've sometimes sided with opinions that I would consider leftist. Sometimes they've gone bang down the middle. Other times they've gone to the right, and it's their interpretation of law. But they all seem to have a rather of something of a gadfly type pattern of decisions. So to claim that they're all leftist or they're all rightist or they're all this or that, I think they're truly constitutional judges, and well, certainly more than anything else. And so in that event, they're to be celebrated. Unlike Sotomayor and Ketanji Jackson and those 2 in particular, come down on the left. 9 times out of 10, and the Constitution seems to be just an afterthought, and they make ideological decisions. In my view, neither of them should be on the court, and they're both Democrat appointed. Roberts seems to be again, I would say he's probably leftist sympathetic, but a bit of a gadfly even there. So, but the idea of having judges that may be constitutional or independent is something that is unthinkable to the Democrats and the deep state machine. In order to implement the globalist project, they must have control of the body's politic. They must have control of the legal apparatus, that the appeal courts, the Supreme Courts, state supreme. They must have control of that if they're going to remove all obstacles to imposing the globalist project. So the Supreme Court of the United States, out of all courts in the world, is the court that they wanted to control. And along comes Trump and fucks up all their plans. So Trump gets, Trump's going to appoint Brett Kavanaugh. He's a constitutional judge. The globalists are outraged by this, so they sit down and they think, okay, what's our game plan here? How are we going to stop Trump from doing this? We've got a number. We've either got to create such a groundswell of public opinion that Trump is sort of forced to withdraw the nomination and put the proverbial black lesbian on the court, or we've got to make it so unpleasant for Kavanaugh that he withdraws his candidacy for the Supreme Court. So we'll go in all directions here at once. We'll hit them with both barrels and so on. Now so they created this fantasy, in my view. They created this absolute insane fantasy, and given the lack of evidence, I think we conclusively say that Brett Kavanaugh didn't engage in any wrongdoing. But so they went back. I think it's when he was in high school. Supposedly he was at college with this lady called Christine Ford, who, by the way, is no beauty queen. Kavanaugh wasn't a bad-looking dude. I'm sure he could have done a whole lot better than her. But she claimed that Brett Kavanaugh had engaged in improper behaviour with her, had kissed her without permission or something. We're not talking high crimes here at all. But that it was just he grabbed my ass. It was that level of sort of thing, and so the rhinos in the Republican Party, the deep state apparatchiks and goons and hangers-on and stooges and flunkies, were all helping to facilitate this and to allow it to go ahead. This absolute fucking circus. So it took days for them to prep Christine Ford. They had her in front of the cameras with media advisors and all sorts of spin doctors around it. No, you need to wear your hair like this. No, have those glasses. No, you have to talk into look. And then he tried to rape me. So they got her trained her on what voice she had to have, how she had to look, how she had to cry. These are the questions that the Democrat senators and whatnot are going to ask you. So this is it. So that's your cue. So when the senator says this, then you start crying in the camera. And remember the camera in the front. So you have to cry in that direction, not this direction. You can't wear any makeup. You have to look like a downtrodden, oppressed woman, a victim of the fucking patriarchy. So they trained her, choreographed her, staged, managed. It was theatre. It was scripted. It was the whole sort of thing. And that's when Brett tried to rape me. So she had this little whiny little girly voice, just a little girly. And it was an outrageous piece of it. And why she was indulged to this extent still is quite beyond me today. Look, this is rubbish. Why don't you fuck off, you time waster? But instead, so they had this absolute circus going on, and then they organised feminist groups of protesters to go outside of the doors of the chamber where all this nonsense was being heard, and they were banging on the door, demanding grassroots, attempting to stop this misogynist, this fucking Nazi from going on the Supreme. The whole thing was just absolutely bizarre. And yet it was tolerated. Somehow these people were able to get into, Senate buildings and into the Supreme Court unchecked. Somehow it was arranged to let them in. Then it was arranged to have the camera, the media there showing these women fighting back against the fucking patriarch, fighting back against Hitler. And the whole thing was quite absurd. But what got me is just how stage managed it was and how choreographed the whole thing was and how it was allowed to happen. The levels of public service, government and all sorts of folks involved, media, of course, in coordinating all this so that the screaming group of women were banging on the door at the same time as, Christine Ford was crying into the camera and all this sort of stuff. So anyway, it was obviously utter and absolute nonsense. And they close together. I thought Kavanaugh was close to cracking at one point. you could see that the pressure was really getting to him. Trump stayed course, but I imagine he would have thought, shit, is it easier? I just withdraw Kavanaugh and put someone else, and that sort of thing. So they were particularly concerned about Kavanaugh. I think his credentials as someone who would follow the law and the Constitution scared the deep state, witless, and they thought, we got to nobble this guy. We have to nobble this guy. It's absolutely vital. But anyway, it went through, and Justice Kavanaugh sits on the court this very day. Now Christine Ford is going around touting some autobiography or something at the moment. The media is giving her a darling run. Her services to frustrating Trump's presidency and the policies, again, are going to be rewarded and recognised. Now, I was channel surfing and I saw just some woman on one of the talk shows, and she's doing quite a few of the talk shows, and I didn't recognise her, didn't think much about it, and had my wife not asked me something, and I had the headphones on, I was listening to, and I stopped on a channel and turned to here, and I heard Christine Blasey Ford, so I turned around and looked, and I didn't I thought the woman being interviewed was going to talk about Christine Blasey Ford, because I remember her for the no makeup, the little girly hair, little girly whiny voice, the glasses and the boohooing. And I remember, again, she was theatrically stage managed to look that way for maximum pathos effect back in the Kavanaugh hearing days. But so this woman strutting around confidently and with full makeup on, the hair, and talking with great self-assurance and confidence. I thought, who the fuck's that? And I realised, hold on, that's her. That is Christine Blasey Ford. I mean, for fuck's sake. And it just illustrates just how theatrically stage managed those hearings to try and bring down Kavanaugh were. And so, and she's there. I thought, is that the same person? But it is, and it was. And so, again, this just illustrates the lengths that the globalists and the deep state will go to. Now, that one didn't get anywhere, but it came close. But look at the time and the effort, the coordination and so on, the amount of groups and bodies and the amount of resources that were put into this. And they were clearly very scared of Kavanaugh being on the court. And why? And the guys... but the fear that they had that he would, in a disciplined legal manner, would stick to the law and the Constitution, and that's the last thing the globalists want. They want every judge on there to be a Sotomayor or a Ketanji Brown Jackson. They want every judge to be like that, and so they will consistently, reliably get pro-globalist, anti-American legal outcomes, which is, of course, what they want and what they need. And we can only thank God that Trump did become president and made those 3 appointments. Because I can tell you now, if he had not made those appointments, if Hillary had got on and there was, Sotomayor was cloned and put on the court, the globalists would pretty much be in control, complete control today. At the moment, the Supreme Court's been not a decisive, but a significant hindrance to them implementing the globalist project. And we should all be very happy that that's how it turned out. You've been fantastic today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.